You hear all the time, be careful of the company you keep because that is who you become, which I agree with. You do tend to become and sort of align with or start to alter or start to change in the direction of the community that you've chosen. And that's at all levels, from humor to worldview to whatever. And so you do need to be careful about your company. But there's another aspect to that story that is equally true, even if you think you're a truly independent person. And that is, sometimes the company you keep fundamentally alters who you are because of your aggressive reaction to remain independent of them or not like them. And a desire to protect yourself from the company you keep, or to not get swallowed whole into a sort of mindless hive, or the ways that you react to the company that you keep instead of become like them can also change you, and sometimes even more dramatically, if not just as dramatically. In high school, and let me just say, this tends to be my default. This is why I'm talking about it. My default is that I am a kind of independent, very stubborn, and just want to be my own thing, my own out, and that's always done well for me in the fact that, like, I'm fine with doing things whether or not anyone else wants to do them or thinks they're cool, or I don't really care. I'm not really fazed by many of those things. But it has some other effects. I've often been in situations where I fought aggressively against sameness to my own detriment. And for example, in high school, I was heavily involved in a religious community. I mean, really, my whole childhood, all growing up through high school, and then in the few years following what would have been college age if I had really gone to college during that time. And then all the way into my late 20s, mid-20s really, heavily involved in a very religious community and circle. And during that time, I was always on the fringe of that group. I saw myself as a willing participant, but I was always the one who was getting in trouble or getting other people in trouble, or having rules made about things that you now can't do because of something I had done. I once had an entire organization who, the year after I left, re-released their new rule book manual for everyone. And like a third of the new editions were things that I had done during the year that I was there that they had never considered they needed to talk about, but now they had to put it in the rule book. To be clear, I wasn't rebelling. I was a willing participant. I just was like, well, that's not how I want to do that. I want to do it like this. And that caused some problems for me. As I got into my music career and really started living in music, I had to do a lot of other things to support a music career, because that's often what happens until you get to a certain level in a music career. And anytime I worked another job, I never thought of myself as the person doing this thing. If I was bartending, I didn't think I'm a bartender. And if I was waiting tables, I didn't think I'm a waiter. And if I was working in a factory, which I did, I never thought I'm a factory worker. When I started working for like a fairly large marketing company, I never thought of myself as a customer service marketing person. I was a musician. I just, happened to be making some money from these side gigs. But that's not what I was. And anytime I got roped into this idea of this is who you are and this is what you do and this is your identity, I aggressively and negatively reacted to that. And I still understand that, because I am allergic to the idea that just because you do a secondary job to pay bills doesn't mean you're not a poet or not a musician or not an artist or not a painter. And so a lot of artists have to fight with this conception where someone says, what do you do? And you say, I'm a musician. And they're like, yeah. But do you have another job? Well, yeah, I also do this. Oh, okay. Well, you're not a real musician, And so that's also bullshit. I'll have a whole other, we should talk about that at some point too. But I will say that it also harmed me sometimes in my ability to learn and grow from the situation that I was in, because I held myself so far apart from it that I didn't want to do anything that made that sort of become a part of my identity, and I lost out on a lot of growth. I found the same thing when I got into wine and whiskey, which is that there's a very caricatured whiskey nerd, wine nerd sort of category, and I never really thought of myself that way. I just really like whiskey and I'm a dork, and for a long time I've resisted this, like, this is what I am and this is who I am, or I did. And I fought against it. And then I got into Wizard Academy, which is a business world, and I didn't know anything about the famous business authors or the famous business books or the movers and shakers and the thinkers in the business and marketing world. I didn't recognize any of their names, and I would come into class and people would name drop those people, and I'd be like, I have no idea who you're talking about. And there was a part of me, I'll admit, that was very proud of the fact that I was in this, running this business school, but I wasn't, I didn't know all of the shtick of business people. And that was wrong. And something has changed in the last 5 years for me, and that's what we're going to talk about. But first, Jim Beam Black Extra Aged. Now, for those who don't know your Jim Beam history, which I'm not that familiar with it, but I know enough to know that there was an age statement on this sort of like black for a long time. I think it was 7 or 8. It was 8. See, this is how rough it is. They dropped it. It became EA, then it became extra aged, and now I think I just saw a graphic that said 7 on the Jim Beam Black recently. So maybe they're bringing an age statement back. And but this is just, by all accounts, at least 6 years old, slightly different focus on the flavor profile than the classic Jim Beam White Label, and still like $20, $22, super affordable. 77 corn, 13 rye, 10% malted barley. That's all we really know about it, but it's a Jim Beam you can get your hands on that's just a little better, or supposedly a little nicer than the generic White Label. So, hey, there it is. In the nose, the most classic bourbon notes you could come up with. So brown sugar and caramel, slight toast note, almost a chocolate cherry, but not really, really rich in the cherry, just sort of generally the direction that you would finally get to cherry if it really came all the way up. But mostly it's that softened brown sugar, caramel, vanillin, toast. Little bit of a dryness that's almost oaky, but not really. But very classic, simple bourbon. 43%. Hey, there's your real dry wooden vanilla. It tastes like... So, I was in a shop last week with my boys, and there were these like wood stick scent things that you like have magnets on and they stick to your car. So it's like, instead of dangling from your rearview mirror, you like stick it to a piece of metal in your car and it scents the car, but it's a piece of wood and it smells a little bit like that pretend scent smell, but it's also kind of wooden note to it, like almost sandalwood. And then it mixes with the smell of my son's really old pickup truck, which is like old vinyl and old cloth and old metal. And there's a little bit of that in here. That's just, I took a sip and immediately I'm sitting in my son's truck with the fresh scent, if it was a bourbon vanilla brown sugar scent. Yeah. It's very simple, not offensive, soft, bourbon and slightly toasted oak. Would be an easy no-brainer. Mix it with Coke, pour it on a rock. Have it, if you're at a wedding and they have an open bar, and what they mean is they got like budget whiskeys and budget gins and budget things, and this was there, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll drink that, no problem. Wouldn't seek it out, but like would not be bummed if it was the only thing available at some gathering. Which, I mean, I think is kind of what they're going for. Just simple, I mean, $20. Hell yeah. Better than the White Label. but I don't know by how much. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so things changed. In the last 5 years, I went through a pretty brutal relationship situation that is not unique to me. And really, it was the culmination of 15 years of arriving at that point. And as I got time and space from it and sort of like fought hard to get back to what I thought of as myself, I realized that I had allowed my aggressive reaction to being in that situation and interacting with that human had changed me and I had kind of become this person that I didn't really like and didn't really recognize. And I sort of in my head always held on to like, no, I know who I am. But there was a lot of people in my life or around me who were like, yeah, but you're different than that. There's a lot of anger there, and there's a lot of things, and these all came from reacting to that situation, and they kind of became a skin that I was wearing. And so it wasn't because I became like that person and they were angry and it was because I was so aggressively trying to find and protect and carve out myself that became part of my identity. As I got time and space and was able to breathe and remember myself, a lot of those things fell away. And I realized that my reaction had turned me into this something that was different than who I wanted to be. And around the same time, I started to ask myself, what else have I been reacting to in order to protect something the reaction has become part of my identity instead of acknowledging what I'm gaining and who I'm becoming in this space that I'm in and what I could learn from this and what I love about this. And through that lens, I sort of started to truly, for the first time, I think, truly settle into my role as Wizard Academy, Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, now Chancellor, and whiskey person. Oh God, I hate the term influencer, but there's a chance I'm an accidental influencer. Oh man, that's a video I need to write down. Am I a whiskey influencer? Anyway, there are things that have changed my life magnificently at Wizard Academy. Not just the whiskey and not just you guys, but the business knowledge and the people and the things that I've learned and the things that are now like in my bones that I've learned from other people and gained and have bettered me and have made me a better communicator and better at marketing and development and all of these things. And I love that about myself, and it's really carved out a new world for me. And I lost that when I was trying so hard to not lose myself into a space that I even refused to acknowledge the gain and benefit from the thing that I was involved in. And that's the foolishness of youth, I guess. I don't know. Maybe the foolishness of a really stubborn human being who's viscerally independent to his own detriment sometimes. But I like who I am better now. And who I am now, I remember the continuity from high school through to now. I see the core thread of everything I actually liked about myself sort of going all the way through to now. But I'm also way better and way more in a lot of the ways that I've wanted to grow and become. And that's because of the situations I've found myself in that I didn't think were my primary identity as soon as I stopped and just let them be. So I don't know where that leaves us, but remember that wherever you find yourself, there is something to gain from it. There's some way that it changes and potentially improves you, and that fighting to maintain your own solo identity is very real. But be careful who you accidentally become if all you are is a reaction. Cheers to you. I'm really glad you're here. If you like Jim Beam, then I don't know, like and subscribe. Jim Beam. I need Coke. I need some Coke. I need some Coke for this.